Now, in Nigeria, many youths often dream of Japa to Jand for better opportunities, but sometimes they face challenges like dealing with agbero on the streets or navigating political cross-carpeting. Let's sit down and yarn, and we know the yarn dust for here, about whether to stay or go. Abi? Ladies and gentlemen, some of the words you just heard have been added to the Oxford English Dictionary. That's right, you heard me correct. And today, we're going to find out how and why some particular words were actually added. Welcome to Jasiri.
All right, so the English language, with its rich history and global spread, has evolved into diverse variants shaped by regional cultures, histories, and geographies. So Nigerian English, a unique and expressive dialect spoken by millions here in Nigeria, has been steadily gaining international recognition. And it seems that popularity is only growing, because recently, the Oxford English Dictionary announced the addition of some 20 Nigerian words to it, over 600,000 words. So for those who don't know, the OED, the Oxford English Dictionary, is the preeminent dictionary of the English language. This includes authoritative definitions, history, pronunciations of over 600,000 words from across the English-speaking world.
Now, by incorporating Nigerian English, the OED acknowledges the dialect's distinctive vocabulary, pronunciation, and grammatical structures, which reflect the country's complex cultural heritage. This development has ignited fascinating discussions about the importance and nuances of Nigerian English, as well as other West African Englishes. It's correct in this term. As the English language continues to evolve and adapt to local context, its various forms are increasingly recognized as vital components of regional identities and cultural expression.
So, I haven't heard all that, so let's dive into the fascinating linguistic milestone for Nigeria. The inclusion of several Nigerian words into the prestigious Oxford English Dictionary. From Naija to Japa and even agbero, these words reflect not just our language, but the essence of our people, culture, and lived experiences. What does this mean for our identity, and how does it highlight Nigeria's influence on the global culture? Joining us now is Kingsley Ugwuanyi, one of the people responsible for this. He's a consultant to the Oxford English Dictionary on Nigerian English and other West African Englishes. He's also a senior lecturer at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, and currently a postdoctoral research fellow at the SOAS University of London. Kingsley, you're very welcome to Jasiri.
Welcome to Nigeria.
Thank you so much.
Good morning. Thank you so much.
And all of you at the Jasiri team, thank you. It's my pleasure to be here this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you join us as well, Mr. Ugwuanyi. So first, let us say thank you for the work that you've done regarding getting our words into the OED. And congratulations as well, because now when they play those words, they hear your voice. That's a big one. So very quickly, I'd like for you to briefly take us through the process. I know that it's not every Tom, Dick, and Harry that can just put the words in the OED, but even any dictionary generally. So how exactly do words get on there?
Well, yeah, it's a long process, right? My first relationship, so to speak, with the OED started in 2018, and we kept working on a set of words that were first published in 2020. So that gives you an idea that it's a very long process. But what happens generally is that the OED has a team of editors, right? There is a World English editor, and an editor specifically responsible for capturing English words coming from what we'd call the non-traditional centers of English. When we think of the traditional centers of English, we think of the UK, the US, and perhaps you could extend that to Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and the rest, right? But the OED said that the idea is to tell a complete story of English, that English is not just used in these traditional centers of English, but in the non-traditional centers, Nigeria being one of them, where the language is emerging. So what happens is that the OED has a range of resources which they use to monitor the emergence of new words. These resources are called corpora, right? So what happens is that when as new words emerge in the language, the corpora alerts the OED that there are certain words that are beginning to be used in social contexts. So one of these resources is called the Oxford English Corpus, which is a collection of different types of written text and also spoken text put together in an electronic database and designed specifically for linguistic research. But there is also what the OED call the Oxford Reading Program. So there are people who are specifically dedicated to reading text from different countries and trying to find new senses. And then when these new words, as the case may be, or new senses of a word, for example, the word area boy isn't necessarily a new word because area and boy are already English words existing, but this is a new coinage, so to speak, putting the two of them together. All right, so what happens is that once these new senses or these new usages or these new words emerge, right, the editors will now make a list of them and begin to search country-specific sources to see how these words are used. They search newspapers, we search also even social media, we use Nairaland because we know Nairaland is one popular platform where many Nigerians talk. We use all kinds of sources where Nigerians write. All right, and then we see in what senses, what are the nuances in which these words are used, and then there is also the investigation of the history of the word. Did this word just crop up 2 months ago, or just a short while ago, or has it lasted for a while? And is it just used in one small part of the country, or is this something that even if it originates from a particular place, it is quite widespread? If you take, for example, the word suya, which is arguably originates from the Hausa language, right? Right, but there's practically no part of Nigeria where you say the word suya and people wouldn't know what it is. So if the word has satisfied these criteria, so to speak, it is something that most people would know what it is, and it is something that's been used for a considerable amount of time. Then they will make this list, and then they will come to consult, and they'll usually come to me, and then they'll ask me, what do these words mean? How are they defined? And do you think we should add them or not add them? And that. So we begin to have that conversation and begin to look for resources. And OED actually does not produce sentences on its own to give us examples of words. So what it does is that it takes live sentences that people have used in real life, from books to newspapers to social media, to give as examples.
All right, Kingsley, thank you so much. It's very interesting to see the words written. We're all giggling in the studio. Yeah. So my brother, we are very proud of you. We are Nigerians, our shoulders are really very high, with all these words getting added to the preeminent dictionary for the English language. But before we go deeper into the Nigerian words that made it onto the OED, you're a consultant to the Oxford English Dictionary on Nigerian English and other West African Englishes. So my question would be that, are there any other words from other West African Englishes that have also been added this round?
Yeah, the one that would come off the top of my mind now is not actually West Africa, but I also did work on that, did the definition myself. It's Kenyan is the word Rolex. I don't know if you have heard the word Rolex. It's not the wristwatch.
Rolex.
It's actually from Uganda. Sorry, I said Kenya, but that's Uganda. It's a dish.
It's a food. Rolex.
Rolex.
like Japa. All right.
All right. So when next I go to Uganda, I'll say, I want a Rolex.
I want a Rolex.
All right, so let's look at the words that have been added this time round. So we have
my God, Eba!
So we have Eba, Edo, Agbero, Abia, Yahoo Boy, Japa, Jad, Suya, as you said, and many more. Cross carpet and cross carpeting. Japa and cross carpet are both used in their noun and a verb, I think, as well. But in terms of these words, you've given us a bit of background on how words are selected when they become common usage and sort of spread their wings. What makes these particular words special in the context of being added to the OED? Because let's be honest, we can see what Nigerian pidgin, which is, we can call it Nigerian English officially, but this is pidgin that has ended up in the Oxford English Dictionary. So what makes these particular words the ones to have been added this time round?
Well, first thing I would say is that what is happening is that these words have made it into the English language from pidgin, right? Nigerian pidgin, also called Naija, is actually a different language, right? This is what linguists say. It is difficult to convince lay speakers that Nigerian pidgin is a completely different language from English, but it is in terms of structure. Because in pidgin, you find all kinds of words. For example, Nigerian pidgin actually originally started off as a mixture of Portuguese and Nigerian language when the Portuguese traders first came into coastal regions of Nigeria, but we're not going into that. It's a completely different language. But what happens there is there's a lot of interaction. Once two languages are used within the same social space, there's a lot of interaction. That's why you see Nigerian English words are coming from pidgin, coming from Hausa, coming from Yoruba, coming from Igbo, coming from all of the languages spoken in Nigeria. All right, but for example, I think the first pidgin word we added was the word "sef." S-E-F.
Okay,
That was
You said.
Yeah, you said.
That was FD.
That was FD. Yeah.
it was added in 2020. It's not this recent adding, and I'll just have to be open. I wasn't really super comfortable adding it because I did tell the OED editor that this is pidgin, that we shouldn't add it, all right, because we are talking about Nigerian English, not Nigerian pidgin English, all right. But they did convince me, and the argument was this: said even though this word, right, is pidgin, but we find it in completely English texts, English sources. For example, somebody could be talking and say, I was there yesterday, but I didn't even know what he was doing, self. All right. So you wouldn't say that this usage, that this is somebody speaking pidgin. What's happening here is not pidgin, but what is happening here is that this word has appeared, this originally pidgin word has appeared in a completely English text. So what is important is that if it appears in English text, English text, that what is happening is that English has borrowed that from pidgin. So it is important that we make a distinction between these. While we could say maybe abi, sef, agbero, and all of these, actually, but there are so many of them that are not necessarily, there's so many of the words that are not necessarily used in the pidgin sense. For example, japa, for example, people use it quite informally, quite jokingly, all right, but used, for example, jand, for example, suya. Of course, if you say suya is pidgin, or there's no other name for it. That's the name of a kind of dish. That is what it is. There is no other name we know for suya apart from. So whether you're talking about suya, people talk about all kinds of, try to say it's kebab or all kinds. It's not really kebab.
It's not kebab. Suya is suya.
There's no other name for it. What we know as suya is suya.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if I...
You made a lot of sense. I was going to continue in the questioning. Thank you very much, because this is so exciting for us. And I'm just here musing. And I'm looking at some of the words that were added. I know a lot of people will not be happy. I would say they will not be pleased or happy that we see things like 419, agbero, Yahoo boys making the list. How would you respond to that as a Nigerian? That could you have ensured that we kept our dirty linens in the cupboard at the back and not let the English speakers know the meaning of these things? Let's just keep them in the dark, you know, about some things that when I get, I can say, oh, Mr. Speaker, you are an agbero. And the guy will be like, oh, that's so wonderful. But now he's just going to consult the OED. Did you just call me agbero?
You call me a rascal?
I'm out. So how do you feel about that particular thinking or,
Well, on a light note, I was in church 2 days ago, and a friend of mine saw me say, Oga, this table where we'll be managing since, you just go back, by carrying our very private words to go and tell Oyibo man. Just put it that way. All right, but Actually, somebody sent me a very reflective essay. I can't remember the outlet that published that, a reflective essay on this, on the kinds of words added. And the essay was arguing that most of the words have are negative words, so to speak, like agbero, 419, and which are Yahoo boy. And my first reaction to that is that the dictionary is not a dictionary of positive words. It's a dictionary of words.
Exactly.
Whether these words are positive or not positive, we have it's not just about Nigeria or even British English. You find words that that are negative. So what happens is that the OED captures words that are in use. And it doesn't really matter. I mean, I've watched so many documentaries. Of course, something like 419 has become a very popular. I watch many documentaries in Australia, in the UK and the US talking about that kind of fraud, right? And it mentions the word 419, right? And Yahoo as well. And because these are very popular. Of course, we know that Nigerians are very popular. Nigeria as a country is very popular all over the world for many good reasons, but also sometimes not so good reasons. And these are all reality. So what happens is that the dictionary captures all words, whether they are positive or they are negative. But this is one response I gave to someone. We have over 60, perhaps even more Nigerian English words in the OED. All right, and I don't think we should expend so much of our energy talking about just 3 of them. All right, 3 of them. There's Yahoo or Yahoo boy phone. Should not becloud the other beautiful words we have. Such as Tokumbo, Mama Put, Ember Mons, Gist, Bacteria,
I love it.
and all of these. There are more interesting words. But then, like I said, the answer is that any good dictionary captures all words, the good, the bad, and the ugly. They are all words.
All right, so Kingsley, let's take a break here. We'll continue this story as the new Nigerian was made meander enter the OED after this break. I mean, one cross carpet go on that channel. For Nigeria, we sabita agili well. So no Japa will deal with us. We dey come back just now.
Don't use our words. So Mama Put is there too. Yeah, very nice. All right, you're watching Jasiri. We're having an interesting conversation on the Nigerian words that were recently added to the Oxford English Dictionary. Our guest is one of the people responsible for that, Kingsley Ugwuanyi. As we started, we looked at the process of adding new words and why certain Nigerian words were chosen. But let's move beyond that. You know, Mr. Ugwuanyi, before we went on break, we were talking about words like 419, agbero, you know, being added to the OED. Many of us aren't happy with that one, especially agbero, cross carpet, you know, because they have deep social and political context. How do you think this inclusion reflects on the Nigerian socio-political climate? If there's any reflection, you know, even, can we say anything about it?
It does reflect a lot on what's happening. The word Japa, for example, is just practically, like I said elsewhere, it's just in the mouth of practically every Nigerian now. And what does it tell us? It tells us about the current economic situation of our country. So why is Japa very trendy now? It is trendy because so many Nigerians wants to travel because they are seeking better, greener, as you already said, greener pastures, isn't it? Economically, educationally, and otherwise. And like I said earlier on, this word is such an important word now that it's, even though we couldn't find older evidence of its usage, because it's just in the last couple of years it became quite popular. I mean, it's been there as a Yoruba word, but what we're saying is when it actually came into the wider English usage in the country. So, but I did argue that it's really important because it is represent. But then also, when we think of other, the so-called negative words like 419 or agbero or Yahoo boy, for example, it all reflects, unfortunately, very badly on our image, right? All right, but it's not about hiding our head, playing the ostrich, hiding our head. We all know that these things are social vices around us, and perhaps now we are talking about it. It's an opportunity for us to represent our country in a better way, or even do things or get involved in things that speak good of Nigeria, not bad of Nigeria.
Absolutely.
Because as we say, these things reflect actually on our social and economic situation. But perhaps more importantly is to focus on the positivity, which is how this addition of these words all help to represent Nigeria or sell Nigeria to the world, like people just always say Naija to the world.
Naija. So we're going to get into that because there's a particular sort of question that looks at that in relation to Nollywood and, of course, Afrobeat. But before we ask that, Nigerian English has evolved. It has a very complex history of colonialism, cultural exchange, and even linguistic diversity. Our English in this part of the world also intersects with languages spoken in Nigeria, including Hausa, Yoruba, and Igbo. You talked about Suya, you talked about Japa, their antecedents being relative to specific ethnicities. How does Nigerian English reflect the country's historical, colonial legacy and cultural diversity? What does it also reveal about the power dynamics of language as well? You know, they say almost every major city in this country has a Sabo somewhere. And we know that Sabo is quite related to the Hausa people. If you go to a city, there's going to be a Sabo part of the city. There's going to be a part of the city that's known for Suya. There's going to be a part of the city that reflects something. And so in terms of power dynamics and language, how are we seeing what the Nigerian words added to the OED reflect when it comes to Nigeria?
I like this question. All right. And it is something I've also reflected on myself. Like if you look at all the words added, right, from 2020 down to this time, you will see that most of them are either Yoruba, Hausa, Igbo. All right. These are just 3 languages, but we know that these are majoritized languages, right, in Nigeria. We call them the big languages, all right, or the national languages. But Nigeria speaks over 500 languages, all right. It just tells us that in terms of how these languages spread, these other languages, when I say other languages, the minoritized languages, how they are spread. There's a lot of power play here, because if these words are added, by promoting these words or by coming into English, somehow also the indigenous languages like Hausa, Yoruba, and Igbo that feed these words are also get promoted. For example, most of the indigenous words added this time around actually come from Yoruba, and there has been a lot of conversation around that. So it also promotes these other majority languages, helping to majoritize them even further. And then what is happening is that the other smaller languages are even further minoritized. So there's a lot of power play here. But then again, there are language policies, because our language policy in Nigeria recognizes these 3 languages as the national languages, even though I have a paper I'm doing coming out where I'm arguing that actually the national language in Nigeria should be Nigerian English, all right, and not any of this, all right, or Nigerian English should be recognized as at least one of the national languages, because it does indeed mark our national identity as Nigeria. So there's a lot of power politics, but like I said earlier on, what is most important, and the positive takeaway from this, is that Nigeria is being recognized as one of the countries speaking English. And I don't know if I should quickly tell a story about how all these things started, actually, how I got to get into the OED.
Okay, Kingsley, hold on that. Let's run through our questions, and then we can come to that, because I see that you're I love the fact that he's passionate about it. Yes. He's writing a paper arguing that, in fact, we should have Nigerian English. I think that leads us to Blessing's questions because I want to have a headache just thinking about the idea of Nigerian English officially.
I mean, so a lot of people have said, and it's true, the statistics have shown that you cannot, every other African language mostly sounds alike, but you cannot really successfully imitate the Nigerian accent and the Nigerian English. Like when Nigerians speak, you know that Nigerians are speaking. But before I ask that question, I'm very curious to know, very short answer. Did you consult, the typical Nigerians for these words? Because some people will say that, there are some other words that they would have preferred will be there, or is it just based on the everyday Nigerian English that you heard, that came up with those words in the OED?
All right, good. Yeah, I've also, many people have come saying very, very casually, jokingly, you should add this one. This one should have been added.
Yeah.
All right. And usually what I say is that I don't work for the OED, that the day-to-day work for the OED, I only consult for them. So I don't have the final say on the words that should make it and the words that shouldn't make it. All right. But also, quite more importantly in that regard is the point that there are a set of criteria which the OED follows. So a particular word might be there, but this word has not been, is not found across the length and breadth of Nigeria. I'll give you an example. We added Okada in 2020, yes. All right? And one of the words that was to be added was achaba. I don't know if anybody knows that word, achaba, what achaba means. All right? Achaba is actually Okada. All right? But
achaba. Yeah.
Achaba is used in the north.
Yes, it's used in the north, yeah.
That I didn't know what that word meant until the OED told me. So I learned about that word first from the OED, and I told him I didn't know. Growing up in Enugu, I didn't know what the word means, all right? Yeah. And I found out, I had to research. I found out it means actually Okada. They use the same way we use Okada, all right? But it's not quite popular outside that region, all right? So many people in the South will not know what achaba means, yeah. But many people, even in the north, knows what Okada means, right? Mm-hmm. So for many people growing up, particularly in the north, for example, who perhaps may be more familiar with that word, would be saying, okay, why don't we add achaba, for example? Yeah. All right. Or you see that achaba hasn't met one of the criteria for addition, that this word has to be used across the length and breadth of, has to be understandable.
Yeah. All right. Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for the clarification. Now, to follow up on Tolu's question, going back to the Nigerian English that you mentioned, the recognition of Nigerian English challenges traditional notions of standard English. In what ways does the Nigerian English reinforce or challenge these notions? And what are the implications that this would have for the language education and communication?
I love that. That's actually what my PhD is all about. So if you start off on this, I can go on and talk about it. All right, but it is really important what's happening now. And like I said, I use the word the non-traditional, because when we talk about standard English, or what some of us will want to call standardized, because no English, no variety of English is actually standard. It's just a choice, right? If you come, I live in Newcastle upon Tyne currently, even though I work in London, all right, there is something called Newcastle English, otherwise called Geordie English. But this British English is spoken around the London, Cambridge, Oxford area, all right? But then, why I usually when I teach students, I tell them that the reason usually when we talk about standards is usually issue of power. Around the London, Cambridge, Oxford area is where the power, economic, political power, as well as educational power is concentrated. So the kind of language spoken around it is ordinarily chosen. So there's nothing about, so every language has the standard variety. For example, the kind of Yoruba you would hear on Yoruba TV news is different from the kind of Yoruba you will hear somewhere in Ado, in Ekiti, for example. So these are all, but this is intentional, and there's nothing inherently good about the standard variety or inherently bad about the informal or the non-standard variety. It's a matter of choice and a matter of, and one example I usually give is what we have today as standard American English, or even if you just call it American English, was once negatively described or viewed by even Americans, by British people. As recent as 2017, I read an article in a British magazine where someone was talking about how Americans destroy our English, all right? But English is what it is in today's world. Perhaps not so much. Historically, yes, because of British, but also in today's current world, English is continuing to spread because of the influence of America. But some British people still feel Americans kill their English or speak bad English. So there's always this negative attitude when a new variety of English is emerging. Yeah. It is normal. And the issue of standardization or institutionalization or accepting it as the model for pedagogy, for teaching in the classroom, usually takes a longer process. It is difficult. For example, WAEC, NECO, JAMB would want, is still patterned after British English. Of course, we talk about, for example, WAEC's oral English papers, we call it in Nigeria. We'll still test Nigerians and we'll still want you to pronounce the word like sachet water. Yeah. But the question, how many Nigerians actually say sachet water? I know if you say sachet water, right?
Yeah,
if you say sachet, that's what are you talking about?
Like I've said it before, so say half.
It happens to me once.
Very interesting. All right. Let's move on.
Many teachers of English will say this is error, don't pronounce it
error. Sachet water.
But it's about what do people
understand.
If you get to a street trader selling sachet water or pure water, they call it actually, not really Nigerian. We say, I want to buy sachet water. I watched jokes about this, why somebody said, I want to buy sachet water. They say, we don't have sachet water. I said, I mean, that is pure water. They say, oh, pure water. Oh, we have pure water.
We have pure water, yes.
It is not the reality of many people.
It is.
If we begin to accept some of these and begin to demonstrate positive attitude towards some of these and standardize them, languages come that way. That is how languages emerge. So there's something called fossilized errors. Sometimes what is called error becomes fossilized and becomes accepted over the years. It happens even within English everywhere.
All right, let's come down to Afrobeats and Nollywood, because those are the two things that are, putting us on the map in Nigeria. Both of them have done wonders when it comes to cultural diplomacy. Like K-pop is to South Korea, so is Afrobeat to Nigeria. What role does Nigerian pop culture, such as music, movies, and social media, play in promoting these words internationally?
Of course, a lot. I can think of course, Nigeria is, we know how popular Nollywood is, and we know how also popular our music is, especially in recent years, right? And one of those words that actually appeared that I would say is coming from Nigerian music industry is the word collabo.
Hey, na collabo!
It's like collaboration in short.
If you go to the OED, OED says it's chiefly East African and West African. And I was arguing that it's Nigerian, all right? But we now found evidence that it's also used in East Africa and also in Ghana and across other West African English-speaking countries. And then because of once we find a few evidence, in other places, then it can no longer be characterized as just Nigerian. But I know that this word is popularized. Let me say, I think is a better word to use. I believe that this word is popularized also by Nigeria, not necessarily spoken by Nigerian musicians, but of course what is happening in Nigeria, because there's a lot of collaboration going on. We just say collabo, especially to collaborate. Of course, it's short form. You could just share it's a short form of the word collabo. But in the context of music, it is used chiefly by Africans, especially.
So Kingsley, we've been having a very interesting discussion so far. This is a conversation I really do enjoy, because Nigerian English, without a doubt, is spreading globally. It's driven by a number of factors. There's migration, there's technology, there's also cultural exchange, you know. So what opportunities and challenges arise from the global spread of Nigerian English? And here's another one. How can we as Nigerians leverage this recognition to promote our language and our culture internationally?
Yeah, the idea, I have a friend, a mentee of mine who is doing his PhD in Canada, wrote me on WhatsApp, very funny. I said, now, when next I'll write to my supervisor, I'll just use the word agbero without...
We don't do.
I mean, he was just pulling my legs with that. And then we had a discussion around that. And the issue is, now that these words appear in the OED, I think what we should do as Nigerians is to take pride in them and use them, all right?
Yeah.
But then also use them even with non-Nigerians. But I put a small caveat there, because when you are talking to people, the most important thing is understanding.
Yeah.
Communication. Right? So you wouldn't want to sacrifice communication at the altar of promoting Nigerianness. Now, if you use these words with someone who you are talking with, making a very important conversation, or selling your market, as we say, and the person is struggling to understand what you mean, then you would be shooting yourself in the leg, if you ask me. So while we try to use this word, promote them, we should also try to know that what is important is communicating, ensuring that the person you are talking with, your audience, understand what you're saying. So if it means, if you really want to use this, especially when you're writing, it's better, it's easier to use them in writing, because that gives you the space to do small explanation. And even if you don't, the context in which you use it in writing might actually make the person understand what it means. And an example I have is the word turban, to ban someone. It's not there in the OED, like we use, somebody was turban, all right, as adjective, all right. In Nigeria, to mean someone has been coronated.
Titled.
All right. So I was proofreading. I do proofreading as well, also by the side hustle, so we call it. Right. I was proofreading a text, an academic text written by a Nigerian, and I saw the word, and the man was turbaned, and I was just playing around with it. I posted it. I shared it on Twitter and said, I'm editing this work and I found this, and actually it's going to submit that to a journal outside Nigeria, and I was just asking my audience, should I correct it? How should I, as a Nigerian English scholar, I feel I should leave this, but also the audience this person is writing to may not all be Nigerians, and they may struggle to understand that. And a professor friend of mine in Australia made a comment and said, if I were you, I wouldn't correct it, all right? Because even though I didn't know this word, but in the context this person has used is easy for me to understand, all right? So because the context, when you're talking about someone being made a king or a queen and the person is being coronated and you don't say the word, the person has been turbaned, being that there's already an English word known as turban, isn't it? There's already an English word there. So it's actually that word has only been used in a verbal or an adjectival sense. So in that, the context makes it clear. So if you are convinced that the context in which you are going to use this word makes it easy for the person to understand. That is fine. And
okay, so I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. You're the closest thing to a dictionary customer service that I have. So,
a dictionary customer service.
I'm just going to quickly ask, right? The example that you used, collabo, for example, I know that I've heard before that in German and France is used when they want to mean that someone is partnering with an enemy. And then
Yes.
in this part of the world, it's used when you want to partner with another musical artist.
With a friend,
Isn't that, there are two different dictionaries, the Merriam-Webster and the Oxford English. That is a very dicey situation, because if I go outside the country to France, for example, and I use the word aspire, I'm using it as two artists collaborating, and then they just hate me for it. Is that not something we should look into? Because it has
Local
two different meanings. So very quickly, can you
Very
answer
quickly,
that?
because we have to wrap up.
In language, context is everything.
Absolutely.
Context is everything. A word that people use all kinds of words, right? And that's what English is one of the most polysemous words that I know. Like one word having several meanings.
several
I don't know if
meanings.
anyone has tried to check the meaning of the word set in English. S-E-T, right? It has, I think, hundreds of meaning, all right? But if you go to the dictionary page where you have set, it has uncountable number of meanings. But we use it every day and we don't struggle. Context is everything. So the context you are speaking will tell your audience that you are talking about collabo in the context of music. But as a speaker, as a writer, if you suspect that you could be misunderstood, that's why it's always good to explain. It's always good to paraphrase or explain, just to make yourself clear, because understanding, communication is the most important thing in language, I would say. So I don't think that would be a big problem. I'll give you an example. A word I've been promoting that it should appear in the OED, and I'm going to make a further case for that, is the word flash. All right? To flash someone on the phone, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Really? Flash me?
You know what it
yes.
means, right?
But flash also means hard, small, hard drive.
I struggle with
Yeah.
that thing, flash.
Flash.
Flash me. Huh? Just beep me.
Wow.
It's a word, right?
Yes,
We use
it
it
is.
very casually in Nigeria, all right?
Yes, so.
The word you are very careful to use here in the UK, because in the sense we use it to call someone briefly and then drop the call before the person picks it, just to notify someone. Maybe you have a meeting with the person, or the person is supposed to do something as a reminder, or perhaps please call me back kind of message, right? But they don't have that kind of telephonic culture here in the UK.
Yeah.
All right, so if you use flash, if you say, well, why are you flashing me?
Are
So
you flashing me?
all right. When I'm speaking with Nigerians on the phone and I've got to use that word, for example, you have to be careful that people around you would not hear that, and they would completely think of a completely
Different thing. Yeah. Wow, we want to say thank you.
Context is everything.
Yes, context is everything.
Context is everything.
We want to say a very big thank you to you, Kingsley Ugwuanyi, for joining us today. Honestly, we've had a very interesting conversation. It's not easy to yarn us about these new Naija words where they enter inside the Oxford Dictionary. As we work as no small they go break. Don't let any agbero distract you. Whether you're in Naija or you're in Jan, no Japa now, cause no Japa now, cause Jasiri go come back sharp with hot topics where they like suya, hot and spicy. Now we will give you our chicken after this. No, come on.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
We've been having a very interesting conversation, and the one we're about to enter into, or the ones we're about to enter into, are hot like suya. If you don't understand the context of what I'm talking about, then you've missed the first half of the show. But anyways, crazy things are happening, and definitely it's been an interesting 24 hours. The second Monday of 2025 will go down in history in Lagos State, as the now former Speaker, Mudashiru Obasa, was impeached on Monday, January 13, 2025. The State House of Assembly members immediately swore in his deputy, Mojisola Lasbat Miranda. Now, Miranda is the very first female speaker of the Assembly.
Not only is she the first speaker of the Lagos State House of Assembly, she happens to be one of the only 4 women in the 40-member State House of Assembly. She has previously served as a senior special assistant at Apapa local government, also working in private sector as well. In 2015, she was elected to represent Apapa Constituency 1. She has also been chief whip of the Assembly. I know there is going to be a lot of pressure on her as the first woman in this role, but we look forward to seeing how she occupies that seat.
All right, so we've got some updates on two stories we've discussed right here on the table. First, from our icebreaker on Monday about the physical assault of the young lady that was recorded and went viral. So Lagos State Police Public Relations Officer Benjamin Hundeyin has confirmed the arrest of 3 suspects, including the owner of the boutique for the mistreatment of the female staff. He also mentioned they were searching for the other staff member in the video. Lagos State's Commissioner of Police has also assured that justice will be served on the matter. Lola wasn't here on Monday when we took that story. So yeah, but that's...
Lola's going to have to hold her feet on that story.
Yeah.
Now, we're moving on straight to our next update, and that is, of course, involving the Oyo State, the Ibadan tragedy that happened. Now, in Oyo State, in a ruling delivered on Monday, Justice K.B. Olawuyi, I beg your pardon, Justice K.B. Olawuyi of the Oyo State High Court in Ibadan granted bail to Naomi Shilekola, the proprietor of an Ibadan-based radio station in the person of Oriyomi Hamzat, and the principal of the Islamic High School Bashorun Ibadan, Abdullahi Fasasi, in the sum of 10 million naira each, with 2 sureties in like sum. Now, the 3 have been in custody since December 24th, 2024. Interestingly, the judge faulted their detention, saying that there is no place in the Nigerian law for a holding charge, which was used to detain the 3. They are charged with conspiracy to commit murder, manslaughter, criminal negligence, and murder. Justice Olawuyi outlined 5 conditions for the bail, which are payment of 10 million naira, 2 sureties who must present proof of ownership of land property within the court's jurisdiction, submission of their international passports, and they are prohibited from granting any interviews during the trial. I just wanted us, of course, to quickly have that update since we've been following this story. We'll continue to give more updates as they come.
Oh. Now to the story that has left many of us in shock.
Yeah.
On Sunday, news broke of the arrest of a gospel singer in Abuja who allegedly killed and beheaded his own girlfriend. Timileyin Ajayi is known in Abuja for singing gospel music, dropping motivation videos online, and being a fitness enthusiast. Now, his last video, as identified by his TikTok followers, was along the line of motivation, saying, "No one can stop you in this world but yourself, and there are no village people," according to him. But this past Sunday, he was apprehended near a church in Nasarawa, close to the FCT. He was seen carrying a black nylon with flies following him and the bag. Finding him suspicious, he was stopped and searched, and a fresh human head was found inside the bag he was carrying, and he was arrested. Now, News Central's Amadine Uyi visited the home of the late girlfriend Salome at Daudu in Abuja to speak to the family. Here's what they had to say.
It was so devastating when I had the information about my sister, Eleojo Salome Adaidu. They called us that they saw her body in Oke. We went there, we saw the body dismembered. She was just pieces and scattered. They were asked to bury her immediately, which we did not want to bury her immediately because we always take anyone that dies to the village. After everything, the police have not given us any information about my sister. We don't know anything about my sister. We are hearing that my sister died in Oke. Why my sister died in Orozo? I just left the house where my sister was killed. My sister died in Orozo. The case have not been transferred to the state's headquarters in Abuja yet. We don't know anything about my sister. We've not seen the corporate. They said they have the corporate in custody. We've not seen the corporate. We've not had anything from anybody. Questions have not been asked. They've not answered our question. The family of Salome Adaidu, we are just in the dark. We don't know anything about my sister. Justice. We just need help. We need justice. Nigerian, please help us. We are not hearing anything from my sister. We are not hearing anything from the police. They are not saying anything. Please, we need help.
All right.
You know,
You have goosebumps.
yeah.
The family, though.
Thoughts is
The family, though, yeah, I mean, the suspected ritualist has been arrested by the police. The family says they have not received any information from the police. My first question, really, without even thinking, my first question is, did you guys not know the boyfriend?
They might not know.
not knowing him. Catherine, what does he do?
What does he do?
You knew the boyfriend, you knew she was, because that's not what she's addressing now. Did your sister tell you where she was going? Is it a surprise to you? The police has arrested, they say they've arrested. Did you go to the police station? What is the police telling you? Did you quote what the police is saying?
She's saying that the police are telling them nothing.
Did you go to the police station? You say we have arrested him. Is it here in this station that you have arrested him, as in is within
And
bars,
that's why
is
she was
behind
saying
bars
in the video that
in this police station.
They said that the crime was committed in a certain place,
But she's gone to a house
got
where
to the house where the body was in a
If you're
rozo.
dismembering somebody, the way she's describing, he took the head, but their body parts
was still
somewhere
in his
else.
house. Yes.
And there's no way you can actively, effectively, really clean up. So she's saying, I believe that she probably saw a crime scene where her sister was originally killed. So now there are questions, because if she's saying that she left her house with a crime scene, yet police are telling her she was killed somewhere else, where was this girl killed? Where was she dismembered? What happened? Like, I cannot.
There's so many questions that needs to be answered. You know, when I saw this story and I dropped it in the group, I was like, we are this generation and the quest for money. I don't even think we have enough time to talk about.
We need to pay attention to our, your circle, your family. Pay attention. Who is interacting with who? We said something to make
But do you know that we blame young girls a long time for chasing boys that have money? She did not chase a boy who had money. She chased a boy who was a gospel singer. Or not chase. She was with a boy who
I wouldn't even be
gospel
surprised
singer.
if they knew him. It doesn't change
It doesn't change anything. People have been with somebody for 10 years. They still kill them and
Do you know, I was talking
them.
to someone whose sister is suffering from something, and she said to me, I had told my sister not to go with this person. I had told my sister not to go with this person. Now she's suffering repercussions. So I'm saying on this table, know where your people are. Know where your family members are. Even as much as they don't hear what
Because even if you know them, people that have been married for 20-something years, have you not heard that husband killed their wife?
At the end of the day,
Let's go, because we're about to fight.
No, on Friday we'll talk more.
No, we need to.
Know them, not know them.
Because there's also another.
They're dying.
There's a part of free will where even if you tell them not to, they will still go, and you are left with the guilt.
Because you not agree hear word. Now, if you not agree hear word, people will say that. No. Listen, if you don't want to hear word,
okay,
as a human being, because love is doing you, because we have.